So, following the recent events with Charlie Kirk, I feel like making another piece of commentary for this channel has become necessary. I have to say things that I think. First things first, I think what happened is really just a nothing other than a display, an outright display of evil. I don't think that kind of response to a figure that you disagree with, or even somebody who, to be honest, kind of had beliefs that I don't relate to or agree with at all. I don't think that's an appropriate treatment or solution or response or whatever you want to call it. It was horrible. Assuming that his family really was there and they were watching him as this all unfolded. I can't imagine what that must be like for the people around him that are maybe not as culpable for maybe if he could be perceived to have influenced the world in a negative way. Not everybody that follows him deserves to have witnessed that. It was terrible. That being said, it really has made me wonder, kind of with the response that that has been generated or has followed his death, kind of the impact that the internet has on our lives and our attachment to media, because there's a lot of information surrounding who is ultimately responsible for his death. I saw a couple theories. I'm not gonna go into specifics, but other countries may have been involved, or maybe our own administration wanted him gone for some reason. A lot of people automatically assumed that someone on the left was responsible for his death. The official narrative seems to contradict that. Instead, it seems like perhaps the person perpetrating his murder, may have been a user of 4chan or some other highly, you know, meme contaminated environment type person, or even associated with Nick Fuentes, who is a very controversial person. But regardless of whatever is truly behind what happened, I think that, you know, we have to accept that every single piece of information and media that we interact with through the internet and through TV and through the media, as it relates to events going on in the world and, our quote unquote leaders, politics, social figures, whatever it may be, there's a filter, because we turn on this black object, it starts glowing, you got some wires connected to it, and then beyond that, most people, that's where their level of understanding terminates. They don't understand the fact that we connected. Where does the internet come from? Who built the computers? Why would they build the computers? You know, why would they build the internet? Why can't any average person go and create a TV channel where, if you just have you turn on your TV and you just flip through the channels, why can't I just go and make my own TV channel? Well, it's because all of these things are kind of operated by people that can have a lot of power. There's a limited amount of frequency bands, in the context of radio and TV that you can operate on. There's public bands, and there's private ones that are owned by large institutions and industries that control the information that we have access to. And if you consider that, when you're on the internet and you're using, these devices that are kind of supplying us with our worldviews, essentially, how can you really be sure that the information that you're getting is true when it's divorced from your own first person, you know, um, empirical knowledge and experience? There's already people that have made the arguments that we don't fully interact with reality as it is. There's people like Kant, A lot of people that have done psychedelics and other kinds of drugs that maybe theorize that we only interact with reality through a filter. We don't perceive it as it truly is. It's a perfect analogy. Um, with the internet, it gets even muddier because we can't be in other countries observing um, acts of warfare and acts of terrorism and things that go on in other countries to have a real lived experience and understanding behind that. All we have is what has been offered to us through the medium that we use to access this information, which I have to reiterate again is you know it's beyond our understanding and beyond our um, kind of our jurisdiction or influence, whatever you want, however you want to say that. Um, so it really gives you something to think about. Uh, do we should we go ahead and start abandoning technology? Is that the solution here? Just kind of um, renouncing, or I believe that's the word, renouncing. All forms of technology, even the ones that we have unfortunately allowed to become almost kind of necessary in our lives, like our cell phones and our computers too, and other things like that. Because not only do these things shape our worldview and are very instrumental in how we think, about the world, about ourselves, about the people around us, but it's pretty proven at this point, and many people have had this experience themselves, that the world, I there is what is known as a surveillance state, or maybe you want to put it as, we're being spied on. Okay. Our phones are listening to us, these kinds of ideas. I don't think that you can really, in good faith, say that these are just crackpot, whacked out conspiracy theories anymore. These are things that rational, normal, relatively normal, everyday people have come to notice. And effectively, through our consent to allow technology to become so intertwined with our daily existence and our obsession with it and our, you know, the mistake we have made in kind of giving up our ability to tolerate inconveniences and maybe, a less enjoyable life or less entertaining life, like all the things that technology offers you, the securities, the or perceived securities rather, the perceived conveniences, being able to make phone calls, um, being able to watch whatever you want to watch, fucking TV, you know, endless amounts of TV shows, online gaming, porn, obviously, all these things are all is all of this really worth giving up our freedom? I think the answer is no. I feel like I'm prepared to abandon these things, but in order for me to do that, because it comes with a very large amount of inconveniences and difficulties in everyday life because of how integrated these things are into the modern Western world. I think it would be necessary to encourage other people to consider whether or not they should be doing the same, because one person alone can't really change anything, but they can catalyze a movement, or at least a movement of ideas. You know, and I think that's what else. What else can I do? So I think that about concludes everything that I have to say here. Sorry if this is jumbled, but you know, I'm probably going to continue making talks like these periodically because after what happened on the 10th of September, I just think that things have to change. Things have to change somehow. You know, we can't continue on like this. The average person that's not bad. That's not vying for power, for endless amounts of power. The average person that's just questioning things and is skeptical of the world around us, and wants kind of the best for everybody if possible, and wants to align with moral good and you know an existence free of suffering, even though that may be impossible. But if we continue to act with this continual level of, you know, turning a blind eye to the way the world is and being unwilling to give up that which makes us comfortable, it's going to have, I think, pretty. It's already had severe consequences, but it's not going to get any better. And I think that's where the solution may lie. So, if anyone's listening to this, thank you for listening. Have a good one.